gentlemen. The fact that I don't get a round of applause, I think, before I get to the podium, as opposed to Matthew, is a clear sign. Perhaps, I think I can take these off, I can't see anything anyway. Is a clear sign of the trust in the public institutions when it comes to this subject. And probably it is quite right. In any case, I accepted to come and provide a certain number of introductory remarks to this debate, not at all because I'm a specialist on the issue, I am not, I must confess, but because I find the subject absolutely fascinating. And I would have loved to be able to stay for the whole evening. Unfortunately, a certain number of events have now been scheduled just after my speech, which means I will not be able to stay on. So I hope that Grégoire, who invited me to come this evening, will provide me with a full readout. Thinking about the theme of your event this evening and looking at the study, it is true that the first thing that sprang to my mind were a certain number of negative images. Big data in the minds of many informed and uninformed people, I am sure, sounds ominously like big business, big money, big finance, big government. Some of us will see flows of data streaming across a screen that you cannot make any sense out of, but you know it can have an impact on your life. Think James Bond in the Skyfall movie having to spot the one piece of information that will save London from the apocalypse. Think the Matrix movies, where we're all in fact data sets that have been given a human form one way or another. It is true that for many people, this sounds like a very uncertain, ominous future. And indeed, one of the gravest concerns that people have, but that they don't necessarily act on, as we have seen, is the privacy of their lives. And I must say that looking at the study which the Vodafone Institute has provided, I was at the same time unsurprised and sometimes very surprised. Unsurprised by the very low levels of trust. Indeed, when you do not understand, which is another one of the key lessons of the study, how can you trust either yourself or indeed the economic actors who are using big data, collecting your data, or the government institutions that are supposed to regulate it. How can you actually know how to act? How can you therefore decide what is best for you? And what most people do, I guess, at the end of the day, as we saw in this video, is decide based on their short-term interest and not necessarily on their long-term values. At the same time, I must say I was sometimes a bit surprised by some of the statistics as to people acting to actually defend themselves against what they see as an intrusion. And I think that I read that some 30 or 40% of the respondents said that they actually stopped downloading apps on their equipment when they were asked for their private details. Now, I don't know about you, but I must have done that perhaps 2% of the time I downloaded an app and I was asked to provide some sort of detail. So I wonder if sometimes even the results of the study are not biased by people's unconscious will to say that they are doing more than they actually are. I'm sure that many of our youngsters are perhaps not more confident, but that definitely more adept at laisser-aller attitude than some of the older generations. However, that is the first impression. Working where I work, in the cabinet of Commissioner Oettinger, in the European Commission, and looking at the economic aspect of big data, it is absolutely clear that big data is part of our present, and indeed it is even more part of our future. So the answer to the first part of the question today is definitely yes, of course, big data is a key to the future. It's in fact already a key to the present. I think you've got over 6 million people in Europe who work directly for the information economy one way or another. it affects roughly 3% of the EU's GDP. And according to certain studies, the proper use of big and open data could increase annual GDP by 200 billion euros a year by 2020. So we are talking, in fact, big business indeed, big economy, big employment, and we must be very careful to find the right balance between people's fears of the impact on their private lives when it comes to the information people hold about them, and there are other fears that will come to the forefront if the European economy as a whole is not able to adapt to the data economy that is emerging progressively. Because there are also jobs at issue, there is also prosperity at issue, and that, at the end of the day, is the balance that we have to find between people's immediate concerns about the data that is held about them and the long-term prosperity of our society. And we know that it depends, in part, on how we master data in the future economy. Now, clearly, the European Commission is active, both in the area of big data and in the area of privacy. On big data, our activities are very wide. They range from research and innovation activities under the Horizon 2020 program, under a contractual partnership that we created at the end of 2014 on data and big data, to forthcoming initiatives in the framework of the digital single market around an initiative concerning the free flow of data in Europe, initiatives on the European cloud in order to ensure that in Europe we do have the infrastructure, the standards, the technological capacity to actually have the sort of data economy to be able to compete with other continents. And then, of course, the flip coin of all this, the privacy initiatives, some of which have been ongoing for a long time and are now at the point of closure. I'm thinking, obviously, about the GDPR. And in the wake of this, the forthcoming reform of the e-privacy directive that needed to wait for the outcome of the GDPR for us to be in a position to start looking at how best to amend it. There are also some societal benefits that should be part of the debate this evening, and I think indeed that they are mentioned in the report. This is not just about the economy versus privacy on the other, it's also about the public good or public goods, such as the protection of the environment, better traffic conditions, for example, in Brussels. I wish big data would help us to solve some of the issues there, although it may have more to do with infrastructure at the moment than anything else, from what I can see, or indeed health. And health is a very, very good case in point, because it is certainly the area where people see the most benefits of using big data, and at the same time have, rightly in my view, the biggest concerns about how the data that they would be giving for this sort of work or these sorts of application would be used. So we need to think also in these wider political terms when we are framing the debate, and I think that the study in this sense was very useful in setting out Europeans' opinions. So I wish you all excellent debates this evening. And I will give you perhaps, before I leave, my personal answer to the debate based on something that happened to me on Saturday morning. At 8:30 in the morning, I was fast asleep and my phone rang. I picked up the phone thinking it was my mother-in-law. I think, there she is calling again early in the weekend. And somebody said to me in English, "Hello, is this Mrs. Delphine?" Delphine is my wife's name, and she was fast asleep in the room next door. And I answered, "No, this is not Mrs. Delphine. Who are you?" And the person answered, "Who the hell are you?" At which point I hung up. Preparing for today's event, I thought, I'm willing to give away a bit of my personal data, if it is to ensure that direct marketers know that I'm not a woman and that I'm not supposed to be woken up at 8:30 in the morning for something I don't need. Thank you very much. Have great debates.